3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Vehicle pushing downrange. Trajectory nominal.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, August 29, 2022. And we are watching what we hope will be the launch of the Artemis I mission, the first in a series of steps that will eventually put human beings back on the moon. And again, I'm joined by my buddy, Mr. Bill Wepner, former NASA flight controller with NASA during the Apollo missions from 1968 to 1970. Apollo 7 to Apollo 13. He currently teaches mathematics at Southwest Tennessee Community College. How you doing this morning, Bill?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Jeremy?
Doing great, thanks. So we are watching a live feed here, as many of you probably are as well. And you can also check it out on several television stations. I know the Weather Channel's covering it. I saw a feed on NBC. Bill, I think you've got, what is it?
C-SPAN.
You got C-SPAN going. So, again, a historic day here as the Artemis I SLS Space Launch System in the Orion capsule.
It's 8 a.m. Eastern Time here at Launch Complex 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We are currently holding at T-minus 40 minutes. It's an unplanned hold while the launch team works on an issue with engine number 3 in the core stage. We're standing by for a go-forward plan from the cryo team. They're still discussing that. Launch director is on standby. We began tanking at 1:14 a.m. Eastern Time. Launch team getting both of the core stage tanks to 100%. Began tanking the upper stage. Once they started an engine bleed, they found that one of the engines didn't get the high accuracy temperature that they were looking for, and that is a constraint to launch. We are currently in an unplanned hold at T-minus 40 minutes. This is something they wanted to test during wet dress 4, but were unable to because they had a leak develop and quick disconnect line that carries the engine bleed off of the engines and out to a flare stack. They have an issue with one of the. So this was the first opportunity for this team to see this live in action. And a way forward. Particularly tricky issue even going in. Engineers are currently discussing that temperature dialed in according to engineers. The engineers telling the launch director they hope to have a discussion with her shortly in the next 10 minutes, possibly. We're standing by for that. Artemis Launch Control. So we are standing by. Listening to the launch team, the launch director consulting with some of the members on our team. Still waiting for the cryo team to report out. We'll have that as soon as it's ready. This is Artemis Launch Control.
Jeremy, that was outstanding audio. Let's keep that because there was some crosstalk, of course, but it was very up to date and informative.
Yeah. timely update. So officially, we look like we're about 28 minutes from the initial scheduled launch window, which is 7:33 a.m. to 9:33 a.m. Central Time, 8:33 a.m. Eastern Time. So it's currently 7:05 a.m. right now. So we will see. We'll see if that holds. It looks like the weather's holding up in South Florida, which is good news. So again, we're watching a live feed here, as many of you probably are. How will the possible crack in the fuel line affect this morning's launch? That's a good question. Hopefully it won't, but again, we'll wait and see. Initial troubleshooting is underway. Any thoughts on that, Bill?
Nothing really specific, except we're dealing with hypergolics again.
Right.
And you just can't rush this process. And to me, a 2-hour window, and if we're counting down and we haven't yet had this conversation with the launch director, this is just my guess. And, it's been 50 years, but if they haven't yet talked to the launch director, when they talk to her, I imagine they're going to have a recommendation. And, but we're starting to cut into this window, and 2 hours is not a long time to be dealing with these kinds of issues with hypergolics.
Right. You can burn through that time pretty quickly.
Absolutely. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Right. Now, you were a former NASA flight controller during the Apollo area. What happens? Let's say you were on shift right now. What would be some of your duties during this process?
Well, if I'm at Houston, I'm mainly listening, because this is all controlled at the Cape. Houston doesn't take control until it clears the tower. But you're certainly listening, and it depends upon your specialty. Now, in my case, my specialty was the propulsion systems on the service module, and there's a service module on this as well. So yes, we're all plugged in. We probably haven't engaged our analog, and I repeat, analog control recorders yet. I don't imagine there's too many analog recorders at this point in technology. Everything is digital.
Right.
But yes, we're listening. We're keeping abreast of what's going on, but it's all up to the Cape.
So again, I'm assuming it's the same setup as it was for the Apollo missions, where you have the crew at the Kennedy Space Center for the launch, and then you also have a crew at Houston who will oversee the launch, or oversee the mission after, like you said, the rocket clears the tower. So
Exactly.
Is that basically the same setup?
Yes.
Okay. And this is an unmanned mission, of course, Artemis I. We'll show some details here, give people some background information on the actual mission here in just a second. By the way, if you're watching us live, either on Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to leave your comments, even if you want to just put your name in and where you're from. We want to welcome everyone who's watching this live feed. Again, there's several, you watch this anywhere on either YouTube or on your television set. If you're watching this live, August 29, Monday, again, just a little after 7 o'clock in the morning Central Time. We're witnessing history again, the first step in a series of missions to hopefully take us back to the moon in the next few years before the end of this decade. It is August 29, 2022 right now. We're watching the first, which is Artemis I. And since we've got a little time here, I thought what we would do is just kind of show a little bit of a background info to get anyone who might be welcome, Baker. It's an exciting day. Thanks for joining us this morning. So thought I'd do is give people just a little background information on Artemis I, to kind of get people up to speed and give people a little bit of background information again on what this mission is and the scale of what we're dealing with. So got a little time here. So I thought we would do that while we're waiting.
Pad in Florida, ready to go, the most powerful rocket ever built. Artemis I, without a crew, will test drive the spaceship that will eventually carry astronauts deeper into space than ever before. The first mission will circle the Earth, then set course for several days to the Moon. Artemis I will fly just 100 kilometers from the surface of the far side of the Moon, a hold-your-breath moment for the mission. Then a much wider orbit for 2 weeks, before it slingshots back to Earth 42 days after liftoff. The aim is not just to go to the Moon.
We're going back to the Moon in order to learn to live, to work, to survive. How do you keep humans alive in those hostile conditions?
One of Canada's 4 active astronauts will be among the crew that takes the next Artemis mission in 2024 that will also circle far beyond the Moon.
Canada will be the second country in the world to go into deep space, right? That flight will go out for, again, an extended mission, circling around the Moon, testing out all kinds of systems.
When humans first went to the Moon half a century ago, it was an all-American enterprise. But Canada's robotics, notably the Canadarm, made this country a major player in space. When a new lunar orbiting space station, Gateway, goes up in 2 years, the latest Canadarm3 will maintain the platform. From its laboratories, the Canadian manufacturer will be able to control Canadarm from Brampton, Ontario. Though at a distance of 400,000 kilometers, this Canadarm will also have to think for itself.
We will only communicate with this space station once every few days. And in between, the artificial intelligence-based system will cause the robotic system to conduct its tasks.
In 3 to 4 years, a third mission will put humans on the Moon, this time at the South Pole, where areas have gone without sunlight for billions of years.
This is a new part of the Moon. It's a place that we've never explored.
The Artemis missions are stepping stones to a destination tens of millions of miles away, the planet Mars. And Canadians will be crucial partners exploring our solar system. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
So again, a little background information. Again, want to welcome everyone. We're just preparing for the launch of Artemis I, and what we hope will be the successful launch of the first in a series of missions to bring us back to the Moon. Again, Artemis I is an unmanned mission, but you saw in that clip there kind of the goal of the mission, which is to test out the SLS, the Space Launch System, the Orion space module, and it will be in lunar orbit for several days. I believe it's a 6-week-long mission starting today, August 29, 2022. Splashdown is October the 10th, and it will come within 60 miles of the lunar surface and then go into a much larger lunar orbit before it eventually comes back. So pretty ambitious, like you said, Bill, for those 3 mannequins on board. But Artemis I, unmanned, Artemis II, if all goes well, will launch a couple years from now, no later than 2024. That will be a manned mission, kind of like Apollo 8, a slingshot around the Moon and then back. And then Artemis III, again, if all goes well, a few years after that. Well, say no later than 2025, we'll actually put human beings back on the surface. So you're looking at a live feed here from Kennedy Space Center, the Artemis I rocket in preparation for launch. We are in a 40-minute hold here. The launch window officially starts in about 20 minutes. So again, we'll just kind of show some more background information, getting people up to speed. Now, in terms of the rocket, I'm going to show you here kind of a clip of the scale of the rocket and the project, and hopefully this will give some insight to just the amount of the engineering feat that was accomplished to put this together. And again, if there's an update, we'll break in and show the live feed again.
It's so impressive to be here, and I really cannot give you a sense of just how massive this thing is.
You see pictures, you see scale drawings, but until you see it assembled and it's sitting on the factory floor, it's like, wow, that's a big rocket.
the average person has no idea how awesome this place is. The things we do here are remarkable.
Space Center in Florida.
This
We are currently holding at T-minus 40 minutes.
Launch pad in Florida ready to go.
While the launch team works on an issue with engine number 3 in the core stage. We're standing by for a go-forward plan from the cryo team. They're still discussing that. Launch director is on standby. We began tanking at 1:14 a.m. Eastern Time. Launch team getting both of the core stage tanks to 100%. Began tanking the upper stage. Once they started an engine bleed, they found that one of the engines didn't get the high accuracy temperature that they were looking for, and that is a constraint to launch. This is something they wanted to test during wet dress 4, but were unable to because they had a leak develop in the quick disconnect line that carries the engine bleed off of the engines and out to a flare stack. So this was the first opportunity for this team to see this live in action. It's a particularly tricky issue even going in to get that temperature dialed in according to engineers. And so we are standing by. Listening to the launch team, the launch director consulting with some of the members on our team. Still waiting for the cryo team to report out. We'll have that as soon as it's ready. This is Artemis Launch Control.
All right, so that's a live update again from Launch Control Artemis I. It's roughly 7:17 a.m. Central Time. The launch window opens up in about 15 to 20 minutes. We are on looks like on a launch hold as a result of some of the testing. Good day from Australia. Welcome. Thanks for joining us live. I think you guys are coming out of winter. We're coming out of summer. Hope all's well down there. So again, while we're waiting, we're just showing some background info on Artemis to kind of get people up to speed on the mission objectives and then the scale and the scope of the project. And if we get an update from launch, we'll go ahead and break in. So we were kind of showing some information on the actual rocket, the space launch system, the size, the scope, and the assembly. So we'll kind of jump back into that, and then again we'll monitor the launch and break in as needed.
NASA's new mega rocket that will take humans back to the moon for the first time in 50 years and take us further into space than we've ever been. For this journey, NASA needs its most powerful and advanced spacecraft ever, a super heavy lift rocket known as the Space Launch System, and an advanced crew.
And holding. I just spoke with Launch Director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, who said that her team is still working on a troubleshooting plan for engine number 3 that had the issue with the engine bleed. She's still waiting for more information about that. Engineers are still discussing it and going over some modeling and data. And once they have that ready, they're going to come back to her and have a discussion. And so she says that she's awaiting that, and we are standing by. again, at T minus 40 minutes, we'll have more information when we get it.
All right, so we're looking at about a 40-minute delay here as they fix an engine bleed. So this could take a minute, a little bit more than a minute to resolve. Any idea when the next weather window is if this one is missed? That's a good question. Again, we got a 2-hour window that supposedly starts in about 13 minutes. Obviously, the launch won't occur at the beginning of that window because they're fixing looks like an engine bleed issue. So this could take a minute. What are your thoughts, Bill, on the possible delay for the issue that they just described?
I can't give you an estimate on that, Jeremy. But just listening to the reports that come in periodically, this was an issue that could have been tested earlier, but was not. It was put on the back burner, so to speak, because of another issue. So, and we've only got 2 hours. If this, I'm estimating if we don't get going and probably within the next hour, we might have to wait until the 2nd of September because we have a 2-hour window. And then if we don't go at that time, then the first alternative date would be the 2nd of September.
Right. So again, these, we're kind of getting an insight here into how launches work. They have one scheduled date with a window, and they're constantly testing leading up to the actual launch, right? So all the different systems, and then supposedly they found something that they need to address, which is an engine leak. And right, if this window is not hit today, then it could possibly get delayed until the 2nd of September, which I believe is this Friday, leading into Labor Day weekend.
Let me break in for a minute. I guess we have to ask, and all we can do is ask ourselves, how serious is this engine bleed leak? I mean, if it's something that can be repaired, say, in hours, that's one thing. Goodness, if we have to roll this back to the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, then that would be a much longer period. The 2nd of September, as you say, is close by. It's the end of this week. And then the third alternative is the 5th, with 3 days later. So we have to be standing by. The next several minutes are going to be critical.
Yeah. You're assuming the issue could be solved on the actual launch pad, but we don't know. They may have to roll the rocket back in and fix it in the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building. So again, you're looking at a live feed from NASA's Kennedy Space Center, the launch of Artemis I. The good news is it looks like the weather is cooperating. The bad news is they've got a cryo engine leak that needs to be addressed. They're working on it now. The launch window opens in officially 10 minutes. Certainly the launch won't occur at that time, but the window opens, the 2-hour window opens in 10 minutes, and we'll see if they can actually address this issue, or if, like you said, it needs to be delayed, possibly even have to roll the rocket back into the VAB, which is a pretty lengthy process. I mean, it's 4 miles from the launch pad to...
Well, you and I watched the rollout. Yes, it's terribly, terribly slow.
Yeah.
And it's possible that 40-minute hold that we're now in could be reduced. That's sort of an arbitrary, I don't want to say an arbitrary number. It's been too long and I'm not in the decision process at all. But it's possible that if they do pick up the hold, that they might be able to reduce that to, say, pick up from T minus 20 minutes. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Is there a defuel procedure if launch is canceled? Yeah. What do? Do they empty the tanks, fix the leak, and then refuel the tanks?
I think so. Yeah, they'd have to do that.
So that's a fairly involved process as well.
Yes.
I mean, a cryo leak does sound pretty involved. Let's put it that way. You don't want something like that. This has to go right. This is the this is the first time we're attempting a moon mission in nearly 50 years, albeit it's not manned. But still, this one, you got to pull this one off. We're talking about several $1 billion here. You don't need anything that could possibly go wrong. It's got to be a successful launch. It's got to be a successful mission. You're taking, again, it's the first step in, you've heard the saying, it's the first step in a 1,000-mile journey. In this case, it's the first step in probably a 1,000,000-mile journey by the time it's all said and done. So this mission has to be a success. And you kind of get a sense here that they take their sweet time, especially when there could be a potential issue. They're constantly testing right up until launch, right, Bill?
Yes,
they do.
Yes. And there are constraints built into this countdown checklist, and certain things, if they occur and they're bad, you don't launch.
Yeah.
And
what are some of the tests?
I think we're looking at that possibility right now.
Yeah. I'm sensing from experience, having gone through this before, it's been a little while, but just hearing what they're saying, there is the possibility that we may not see a launch today. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but it does sound like this is an issue that certainly needs to get fixed. Do you remember, going back to your Apollo days, going through something like this on one of the other Apollo missions? I mean, you witnessed what, 6 of them, 6 or 7 of them, I guess, because 13.
Yes, and I wasn't on the launch team for any one but Apollo 9. And my recollection of Apollo 9, it just went fine. There were no holds. In fact, I observed from off-site most of the launches, and if I recall, there was a hold in Apollo 8 for some time, not long, of some minutes. But beyond that, I don't think there were any holds in the launch. They went all pretty much on schedule.
That's remarkable when you think about it. So you don't really, when you look at those Apollo missions, they launched on the day they were scheduled. There may be a few minutes of delay here and there. Again, there's a launch window you're trying to hit, but you don't recall one of those Apollo missions being delayed by, let's say, 3 or 4 days as a result of something.
Now let's go back to Mercury. That was a whole different story. And we did have those long delays back then. And some of those launches were scrubbed and had to be rescheduled days later. But we were dealing with a completely new, totally new technology. We'd never done this before. Apollo, we had gone through all of Gemini. We were fairly up to speed on the whole launch sequence. But now we're dealing, after 50 years, we haven't done anything. Yes, we have shuttle, but this is a totally new system again. And so I'm not surprised that there is a delay. This is a completely new system that we're dealing with.
Yep.
I can be disappointed, but I'm not surprised.
Right. Yeah, in a perfect world, everything goes according to schedule. We see the launch and then we get on with our day, right? Walk the dog, go to class, conduct business. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily work out that way, but we will see. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great point you bring up. I mean, back then, half a century ago, throughout the course of the moonshot program of the 60s, Mercury, Gemini, and then Apollo, it was completely new. I mean, you were basically almost making it up as you go. I mean, obviously there's still structure and there's engineering and there's a procedure, but a lot of it was just kind of figuring it out as you go. We're in this particular case, I mean, it's a new system. So yeah, it's been half a century now, nearly half a century, but there are some similarities, I guess, if you will, some overlap in terms of the scale and the scope of the mission and the rocket and just the overall, I guess, constituents of the entire system. So, but yeah, you got to get it right.
One other thing, Jeremy, we have a totally new crew. I'm talking about on the ground, all the engineers. Anybody that worked on Apollo, Gemini, many of them are not with us anymore, and those that are long since retired. So this is a completely new population of engineers and decision makers.
Right. That entire generation is sadly passing on. I mean, you're one of the few that's still going. So welcome for those of you who may be joining us. It's 7:30 a.m. Central Time. The launch window opens officially in 3 minutes, but we won't see the launch in 3 minutes. They're working on fixing a cryo leak in one of the engines. So we'll see how long that takes and whether they hit the 2-hour launch window today. And again, I'm joined by fellow MAS member and former NASA flight controller, Bill Wepner. We're watching the launch live and kind of comparing what we're going through now with Artemis to some of the experiences that Bill had during the Apollo days and the Gemini days and the Mercury days. So delays are perhaps disappointing, but not necessarily unexpected. So we're just waiting for an update here. And yeah, you dealt primarily with all of the systems after launch, correct, Bill? And then
yes,
for splashdown, that was your big thing. So, and you're constantly testing. I mean, this is a system that is very intricate, has a lot of different parts, and there's a lot of different teams too. This is not just a NASA endeavor. I mean, I think it was the European Space Agency that designed the service module. And there are several companies, of course, throughout the United States that worked on different parts of this entire system. So it really is a fairly involved project, very involved, in fact. So, and that's what makes this so exciting.
Launch control at T-minus 40 minutes and holding. I just spoke with Launch Director Charlie Blackwell Thompson, who said that her team is still working on a troubleshooting plan for engine number 3 that had the issue with the engine bleed. She's still waiting for more information about that. Engineers are still discussing it and going over some modeling and data. And once they have that ready, they're going to come back to her and have a discussion. And so she says that she's awaiting that. And we are standing by. Again, at T-minus 40 minutes. We'll have more information when we get it.
All right, so they're working on a troubleshooting plan. That tells me that there needs to be a plan and then a procedure and then an execution. If I'm understanding that correctly.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
and each one of those segments takes time.
Right. So they have an engine bleed in engine number 3. And again, there's 4 massive engines, I believe, on the bottom of this rocket, or maybe I'm not understanding that correctly. So one of those apparently has a leak or a bleed, and they need to address that and fix it. It'll be interesting to hear the details of what needs to be addressed. You know, you think back to Neil Armstrong's famous words prior to the launch of Apollo 11, of course, the first mission that put human beings on the moon. But he was very, how do I say, nondescript, almost magnanimous about the mission. He's saying this is our first attempt to put human beings on the surface. So success was anything but guaranteed. And he realized that he was one really in a chain of human beings that were part of the overall program. And he just happened to be that person, that mission that was executed perfectly, almost perfectly. And, you know, ended up being being the first one to set foot on the moon. But prior to the launch of Apollo 11, his description was, this is an attempt to land on the moon. So, we look back on the Apollo program and we see clips and we see documentaries and we see footage. And, today we're either blessed or cursed, depending on how you look at it. I would say blessed to have, vehicles, platforms like YouTube where we can go back and actually witness those broadcasts live. Certainly for someone like me who was born after the Apollo missions. But, to actually witness the experience live, it's similar today. There's a process of waiting. And
this is Artemis Launch Control with an update. Launch Director Charlie Blackwell Thompson has called a scrub for today. Again, Launch Director Charlie Blackwell Thompson has called a scrub of the attempt of launch of Artemis I and the Space Launch System with the Orion spacecraft. The issue that came up was an engine bleed that couldn't be remedied, but the rocket is currently in a stable configuration. It was mostly tanked, but not completely tanked. Engineers are now working on a plan to continue gathering data about this particular engine and the bleed that didn't work out. The rocket, the hydrogen bleed, rather, was a goal of the previous wet dress rehearsal that didn't happen due to a hydrogen leak. So engineers are focused on gathering as much data as they can at this time. So they have not gone to draining the rocket just yet. They're going to keep it in its current configuration and gather that data. To summarize, we held at T-minus 40 minutes and counting after the team was unable to get past engine bleed that didn't show the right temperature once they got into the engine bleed test. And ultimately, the launch director has called a scrub for the day. The earliest opportunity, depending on what happens with this engine bleed, would be September 2nd. That is available to the launch team. However, we will await a determination of what the plan is to go forward to remedy the engine bleed and then go from there. Again, an availability to launch, the next availability to launch is 12:48 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, September 2nd. But we must wait to see what shakes out from their test data they're currently gathering now, and the decision that's made by the launch team about where to go from here. We appreciate you watching NASA TV and our coverage of the Artemis I launch attempt. This is Gerald Nail with NASA Communications signing off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Thank you.
All right, so it's 7:38 a.m. Central Time, and again, you just heard the update from the live NASA feed that the Artemis I launch attempt has been scrubbed for today, August 29. Again, due to an engine bleed. I believe it was engine number 3. So it'll be interesting to hear the update as they address that issue. I'm sure we'll hear an update on it as the week progresses. The proposed launch window for the next attempt was initially September the 2nd. It's not official yet. Again, we'll have to wait and hear the news. I'm sure many of you watching this live feed will be checking it out either on your local news, on the national news, or of course all over the web. So NASA TV will give us an update. But for today, Monday, August 29, 2022, the launch attempt has been scrubbed. The good news is, Bill, we got the update early, so we didn't have to wait 2 hours to get the official news. So your instincts, I guess, as an experienced flight controller, certainly were correct in that when they're troubleshooting a problem and waiting for a quote unquote plan, it means it's going to take a little bit. So, yeah, we will just have to wait for an update on when the next launch is going to be. Hopefully later this week on Friday, September 2, but we don't know yet.
May I interject one comment?
Absolutely.
Our launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, just earned her salary today making that decision. That is one tough decision to make.
Yeah. You think of the courage it takes. I'd use a different word, but of course not appropriate, but it takes a lot of courage and a lot of leadership to make a move like that. She earned her salary. That's a tough move when the world's watching, many of us live, getting up early on a Monday morning. But you got to get this right, like you said. Very important. So is Elon, I think it's Elon's Starship inside. No, actually, Bill, do you want to talk for a minute about the different components of this spacecraft? We have the Space Launch System, which is the rocket that propels the service module and the Orion spacecraft into orbit when the mission actually is launched. But no, this is not Elon Musk, correct?
That is correct. Elon Musk's Starship is being considered as, in fact, very strongly considered for what we call the human landing system, which would take us from Gateway in orbit around the moon to the lunar surface and back. It's also being considered for other aspects of future lunar flights. So he's strongly in the picture, but not for these first few Artemis flights. This will be the space launch system that we're looking at on the pad.
Right. And then I believe they want to put the Orion spacecraft and then also the service module into orbit around the moon for several days to test out all the systems, make sure everything operates as it should, because eventually when you put human beings on board for several days, we want to make sure that all those systems are operating correctly and that there are no flaws, no issues, nothing that could malfunction. We don't need another Apollo 13.
Those are the main objectives for this particular mission, Artemis I, whenever it occurs, is to test out that crew module, the Orion, and the service module.
So again, officially it's been scrubbed. We will wait for an update. What are your thoughts on September 2, given what we just heard briefly this morning about the issue?
I think we're going to have to see whether this issue can be resolved while the launch system is on the pad. If they have to take that back to the vehicle assembly building, I don't see how we can make September 2nd, or for that matter, September 5th, which is 1 week from today.
Right. Right. We watched the rollout about 10 days ago, I think it was. And you're talking about a 4-mile journey. That's a very slow creep. How fast does that crawler go? 1 mile per hour at the most, maybe more?
Something like that. Yes.
So you're talking about rolling it back in if that needs to be done. That could be several hours, maybe as much as a day right there. Then you got to fix the problem, roll it back out, and you've got to consider the weather. So there's a lot of things that would need to go right. I guess we could just say if it's going to be rolled back into the VAB, there likely will not be another launch attempt on September the 2nd. So it's on the launch pad right now. For those of you who are looking for an update from the news, one of the critical pieces of information would be, can they fix the problem on the launch pad, or do they need to roll it back in, fix it, and then roll it back out? So again, if you're just joining
we won't be live during this week. Is that correct?
We won't be live as far as another stream, or?
Yes, because I was going to suggest the one good site is nasa.gov.
Okay. NASA.gov. And then, of course, if you're on YouTube, NASA has a YouTube channel as well. And there are several places where you can go. Obviously, just do a search for Artemis or Artemis I. But yeah, nasa.gov is probably the best source for getting an update on the Artemis I mission. So again, nasa.gov. So yeah, we'll just have to be patient, wait and see, check the news. But we're at 7:45 a.m. right now. Again, the good news is we've only been broadcasting for about an hour, a little less than that, 45 minutes. And we got the news early, and it was a good call. When in doubt, wait, right? This is
Absolutely.
a process. So with that, if anybody else has any other comments or questions, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. But officially, the Artemis I launch has been scrubbed for today, August 29, 2022. Again, this is an ambitious mission. First time in 50 years, we're attempting to launch a rocket of this size with a mission of going to the moon and back. Even though it's an unmanned mission, it is pretty ambitious. So a lot of things have to go right. And if there are, I mean, certainly an engine bleed sounds like a pretty serious issue. I won't say serious, but certainly an issue that's going to need attention in order to get it fixed. So we'll wait for the update. Any other thoughts, Bill?
Nothing to add.
All right. Well,
we'll see. We'll see everyone the next time we go live.
Yeah, once we get an update on the launch, if we get another launch window, whether it's September the 2nd or another date, hopefully it'll be September the 2nd, which will be this Friday. We'll do another live stream. We'll try this again. And again, for a lot of us, this is the first time we're going through a project of this scale in our lifetimes. Bill's been through this with the Apollo missions and then Gemini and Mercury before that. So this is nothing new for him necessarily, but for us, yeah, we got to learn to be a little patient. But we'll do another live broadcast. Hopefully the second time will be a charm, or the third time. And we'll send out an announcement soon once we have an update from NASA on when they're going to try this again. So with that, it's 7:47 a.m. Again, happy Monday. We'll send everybody on their way so they can get their day and their week started. And we hope everybody has a great week. And yeah, join us again when we try this, when NASA gives us an update on the next attempt. So Bill, thanks again for joining us. I know you got to get to class.
Glad to be here.
All right. So guys, we'll end the broadcast now. And thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for an update from us soon. Take care.